Hello and welcome to Planet 40k. Today we're going to keep it moving with the Necron reviews, checking out the Locust Lord from the Necron Codex. So this model was previously known as the Destroyer Lord from the old editions, and now with the new development of other destroyers within the faction such as the Scorpec Destroyers and Ophidian Destroyers and the Hexmark Destroyers, they put a new title on them to differentiate them. So the Locust Destroyers are the dudes that fly on the platforms, quite like the old school Destroyers. So anyway, enough rambling on about that, let's get into the review. So some keywords of note to kick us off. They're a destroyer cult, which interacts with other destroyers. It can also go into any dynasty, which we'll check out those options later in the video. It's also classed as an infantry unit for the benefits of terrain. He is a character under 9 wounds, so that lookout sir will be in effect. He's got the fly keyword, so he'll be jumping over models and terrain, and he'll also be mixing it up in combat with flyers. And then of course he's a Locust Lord. So that's his keywords. He comes in at 6 power level or 105 points, which is pretty cheap in my book. There will be a few upgrades on top that will bump the price up slightly, which we'll check out later in the video. So going into his stats then, so movement 8 inch, weapon skill 3+, ballistic skill 3+, strength 5, toughness 6, wound 6, attacks 4, leadership 10 and a 3+ save. So he's pretty tough there with toughness 6 and 6 wounds on top of that. So the Locust Lord has living metal, which is regaining a lost wound at the start of the turn, nice. Command protocols, which is your army-wide buff each turn, also nice, especially as he's a character, so as long as you've got a noble on the table, your Locust Lord will always be within 6 inches of himself to benefit from those directives. His third ability is hardwired for destruction, which effectively lets him reroll 1s to hit, very nice. Then you pair this with his next ability, which is called United in Destruction, which is an aura ability that grants all destroyer cult units within 6 inches reroll 1s to wound. So he gives this ability to himself as well as he carries the destroyer cult keyword. So now he's rerolling 1s to hit and 1s to wound, nice. Then finally he's got the phase shifter, which is a 4+ invuln save, which is quite standard with the HQ models in the book. So some really useful abilities there. Seems like a solid buffing unit with a good amount of resiliency. So just before we get into the war gear, can I just get you all to do me a huge favour? It's very easy to do, just hit that subscribe button below. We're aiming for 2,500 subs by Christmas. The content is all free of course, so there's no catch. It does me a massive favour in getting exposure to the channel, and if you are one of those subscribers, thanks a million, we do appreciate it. Okay, coming away from the channel plug, so the war gear is next. I'll start with the upgrades that you can add to your Locust Lord. So the first is the phylactery, which will cost you an additional 5 points. So when you're using your living metal ability to regain a lost wound, instead of regaining 1 lost wound, you regain D3 lost wounds. So that is well worth it in my opinion. It's quite rare that your Locust Lord will die in a single turn, unless you leave him out in the open to be shot of course, or leaving him unguarded against a kitted out combat unit. But in a character versus character battle, it usually takes a few turns for one of the characters to win the fight. So if you do get another turn with him, then it's a solid boost getting D3 wounds back. Potentially you can get 3 wounds back, which is really good, but even if you only got 1, it's still totally fine because you're using this every turn. So it's only 5 points, so as us Brits say, it's cheap as chips. The second bit of kit that you can give him is the Resurrection Orb, which will set you back 30 points. It's a once per battle only orb, and you can use it on any dynasty unit that has the reanimation protocols rules, which is almost everyone. So you use this on all the dead models, so not just the models that have been slain that round. Now, reanimation protocols works best on single wound models such as warriors, especially with the fact that they can reroll 1s. But your Locust Lord is most likely going to be more upfield due to his speed and his buffs from the more offensive abilities. So it can be aiding, say, Lich Guard perhaps, although they've got 2 wounds there, so it's a little bit more tricky. The obvious synergy here is other destroyer cult units such as the Scorpec Destroyers, but they've got 3 wounds each, so reanimating them is pretty hard. It won't be as useful. Flayed ones probably will benefit from this the greatest, because they've got the deep strike ability, so they can most likely be close enough to be reanimated, and the flayed ones come in max units of 20. And they've only got 1 wound each, so it's pretty easy to get them back. So imagine being down to your last 3 flayed ones and the orb gets popped. 17 rolls of a d6 and any 5s or 6s will get your flayed ones back up again. There is an additional buff to this, which is a relic upgrade, which will be mentioned later in the video, and you can make this a 4+ roll rather than a 5+ roll. Okay, so for his actual weapons then, he comes stocked with the Staff of Light, which is both ranged and melee. The range part of the staff is 18 inch range, assault 3, strength 5, -2 AP and single damage. So a nice simple range weapon then, nothing crazy about that. But the -2 AP is what makes it an okay option. Unfortunately, the Locust Lord doesn't have the ballistic skill 2 like the Overlord or the Scorpec Lord does, so he will miss one of those shots on average. However, he does reroll 1s. Single damage won't likely take off a marine model, but it can at least peel off a wound. The melee side of the weapon is virtually the same stats, but bear in mind it comes with 4 attacks now, so you might be able to get an additional wound off of it out of that one. So if you didn't fancy this weapon, there are actually 3 options that you can exchange it for, 2 of which are a free trade and 1 will cost you 5 points. So the first is a Void Blade, so it's strength user making it strength 5, minus 3 AP and 1 damage, and each time you use this weapon you gain an additional attack, bringing you up to 5. So quite similar stat wise to the Staff of Light, just has a slightly better AP modifier. I personally don't like this even though you've got an extra attack, because now you're losing your shooting capabilities from the Staff of Light. So I don't think the trade-off is quite good enough. Again, the minus 3 AP is nice, but I'd rather have the shooting. The next option is the Hyperphase Sword, which is strength plus 1, making it strength 6, minus 3 AP and single damage. So this one's also a minus 3 AP, but it now exchanges the extra attack for an extra bit of strength. So this only really comes into effect when you're fighting against toughness 3 or toughness 5 models, because against toughness 4, you're still wounded on 3s, so it makes no difference. So this one isn't really for me. I mean, you're losing that shooting again for the extra strength, which you might not even need. The final upgrade here, which will cost you 5 points, is the War Scythe. It's strength plus 2, making it strength 7, minus 4 AP and 2 damage. So every stat here is great. Strength 7 will reliably hurt vehicles as well as everything else. Minus 4 AP leaves no room for any solid saving throw unless they're on invuns. 2 damage a pop now starts to really stack up well, and will take Marines off the table. It'll also hurt characters, and as I said before, those toughness 6 or 7 vehicles will start to feel it as well, especially with your Locust Lord having 4 attacks base. It's a shame he hasn't got the plus 2 weapon skill, but again he rerolls 1s. So this is the weapon I'd be selecting, especially if you're going up the board with him for sure. So if you've made this guy your Warlord, there's quite a few traits here that work well. We did do a Warlord trait video about a month or so ago, so I'll put a little clicky in the top right corner for you to check out in a bit more detail. So the first one, Enduring Will, so it's really good as it subtracts 1 damage to a minimum of 1. So if he gets hit with say a 3 damage weapon, it will just go down to a 2. Now when you're pairing this with his Living Metal ability and the Phylactery, then the amount of wounds you're regaining is incredible. Eternal Madness, giving rerolls to wound, not as good as he rerolls 1s anyway, but it will slightly help, especially if you're rolling a lot of 2s. They're the 2 I'd probably look at the most. I'll go through the Dynasty specific Warlord traits when we head into the Dynasty options. In fact, we may as well go into that area now. So the Novak code gives you a +1 to your charge, which is quite handy, and it also gives you a -1 AP modifier to your weapons in melee. Now if you did select the War Scythe, it's already on a -4, so you probably won't need it for that. But you may have some flanking units that will benefit from that. The Mefrit code gives you a +3 inch to your Staff of Light, and if you shoot that at half range, it'll improve the weapon to a -3 AP weapon. The Warlord trait of it is actually very good for your Locust Lord, because it gives you a +1 strength and +1 attack. So that's quite big for a strength 7 War Scythe, because it now makes it a strength 8 War Scythe, and you're getting another attack with it. And strength 8 hurts anything on the table. The Zarokhan Dynasty gives you a 5+ feel no pain against mortal wounds, so even more durability to add to an already durable unit. They also gain a single reroll to wound per phase, so you're rerolling 1s, and any other dice roll of a 2 you can be rolling that as well. Custom codes that are worth looking at are Red Reeved, making most standard infantry units drop down to a toughness 3, thus making your strength 7 War Scythes wound on 2s. Butchers adds 1 to your charge roll, if that's something you're interested in doing, throwing him up the board. Then from the second list, there's only really Relentlessly Expansionist, which gives you that 6 inches of movement after deployment, which might be able to get you into cover or just get you closer to a unit that you want to get into combat with. So they're all the Dynasty codes that work well with the Locust Lord. There are a few noteworthy mentions from the Warlord traits area though. So the Nefric Dynasty code has a Warlord trait which makes your Locust Lord a -1 to hit throughout the battle, which is always handy. And the Nihilak trait allows your Locust Lord to always fight first in combat. Again, it's pretty strong at the moment. We'll talk about the stratagems next, then followed by the relics after that. So to be honest, there's not much to talk about with the stratagems. Nothing in the book really directly aids your Locust Lord, except for the standard stuff like giving extra relics or extra Warlord traits. The Dynasty specific stratagems at least have a bit of play, like the Novak one gives you an extra attack, or the Sautek one adding 1 to hits against certain targeted enemy units, or the Zarokhan stratagem which gives Deny the Witch on a 4+. But again, these are quite generic for the whole army to use. Now the relics are a different game altogether, as now they're only going to be put on non-named characters. So again, we actually covered all the relics in a video, so I'll put another clicky in the top right for you to check that one out if you haven't already. So the first one of note is Orb of Eternity, which was mentioned briefly in the War Gear section of this video. It replaces your Resurrection Orb and gives you a +1 to your reanimation rolls. So it's a once per battle item, but you can pass reanimation rolls on a 4+ instead of a 5+. Nano Scarab Casket is a relic which lets you gain an additional wound in your living metal ability. Now pair this with a phylactery and you'll be gaining D3 plus 1 wounds back every turn. That's pretty crazy. It's probably a bit overkill, to be honest, you won't need that many each turn. The Voltaic Staff upgrades your Staff of Light to a better variant, but to be honest I'm still looking at that War Scythe. The Void Reaper, however, upgrades the War Scythe to a damage 3 weapon and no feel no pain rolls can be used against it, but the damage 3 part alone is pretty neat. If you go with the Novak code, then they've got a relic called Blood Scythe which switches out your War Scythe and gives you 2 additional attacks. Quite nice. That's all the relics I'd look at. I'm sure you guys can come up with some more fancy combos, you always do. The Necron community are pretty smart with stuff like this. So to conclude the Locust Lord's review, he's got nice speed, which keeps him up with other Destroyer cult units such as the Scorpec Destroyers. And with that War Scythe you can really be putting a lot of hurt on some units. Be sure to select a relic to make the most out of him, as only a few units in the list are going to have access to the relics. If you do choose to keep him back, it's not the worst idea, as he can use his Resurrection Orb with nearby warriors that are surrounding some heavy Locust Destroyers. And now they'll be getting buffed with rerolls of 1 to hit and to wound due to the Locust Lord being there. He can still have a War Scythe to defend everybody back there, or even use a relic that wasn't mentioned earlier called Gauntlet of the Conflagrator, which is a 12-inch range and it auto hits, and any 6s will cause mortal wounds. It's also a pistol too, so it can be shot into combat, so that's going to deter any horde units from jumping your back lines. He's one of the most resilient HQs in the book, especially with that phylactery, which is an auto include for me for only 5 points. The model itself isn't an auto include though, as firstly he's not a noble, so if you want those command protocols you're going to need an overlord or a named character or a command barge. Then squeezing in one of the cryptex or a royal warden on top is going to be quite difficult, not to mention a Scorpec Lord, which is a very good alternative to this unit. We did do a Scorpec Lord review which is in our Necron playlist if you haven't checked that out already. So he's actually got a weapon skill and ballistic skill of 2 and a base strength of 6. So those 3 stats alone beat what the Locust Lord has in those areas. However, he doesn't have access to the Resurrection Orb or the Phylactery. However, the Scorpec Lord's weapons are slightly better in my opinion, but both are solid choices. A lot of Necron players would argue that the Locust Lord is the better choice, but it's a close call for me. So for the rating, I'm going to be giving the Locust Lord a Planet 40k rating of 4 out of 5. Now I can't go more than that for a few reasons. So firstly, he's only buffing certain units like the Destroyer cults. And secondly, he carries a strength 7 weapon, unless you use the Mefrit Warlord trait making it a strength 8, whereas the Scorpec Lord comes with a strength 8 Hyperphase Harvester, which is also damage 3 as well. And yes, you can make this a damage 3 weapon by turning it into a Void Reaper with a relic, but now you're using up a relic slot as well as a Warlord trait slot, just to match what you've already got with a Scorpec Destroyer. And if you do that, then you're not going to be having an Eternity Orb or any of the other relics in the book. So once you kit this guy out to the fullest, he comes in at 145 points, which is 15 points more than your Scorpec Lord. So it's still really close in my opinion. Anyway guys, that's my thoughts. I think this one will cause a bit of conflict in the comments, so fight your case with each other below, in an orderly manner of course. Remember to subscribe and like the video too. I can't stress how important it is to like the videos, it massively boosts the algorithm on YouTube. Thank you all for watching and I will see you all in the next one.